Hi, Vitalik.
Hi, Demian. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for coming. It's a big honor to have you here. We really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Open source.
Yes.
You've been advocating for radical openness for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Ethereum processed 10-year anniversary recently. Congrats for that. We're at a very special moment in the industry. We see a lot of adoptions, not only from the crypto native projects, but also from financial institutions getting into the space, where they have different set of requirements, different set of behaviors and needs, and they're all trying to build on chain. So how do you see the two worlds converging, kind of financial institutions with the crypto native builders, and how do we make sure that things are radically open and then we build with the values that got us here?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things over the last few years is definitely like how quickly this space has been getting mainstream, both in terms of user adoption and also institutional adoption. And I mean, there have been institutions doing blockchain things 10 years ago, and I think, but then at that time, like realistically, it was like at best experiments and proof of concepts, and at worst, it was companies and governments, virtue signaling to basically show that they're not like completely behind the times. And blockchain was the cool new thing; they had to be cool and new. And since then, we've seen the space mature. Since then, we've seen people's understanding of the space mature, and so now we're seeing like a lot of these stablecoin projects launching. We're seeing people use and talk about prediction markets in a very mainstream way. Also the number of people just using crypto for like payments and savings is continues increasing, and these trends are good because they bring adoption, and they're good because also they put capital in the hands of people building the infrastructure. But at the same time, there's definitely this kind of dilution of principles that's really important to guard against, right? And it's a process that often happens slowly, right? And it's you start off by adding one extra server in the middle for convenience, then you add in a multi-sig for security, and then you just never actually decide to take the multi-sig out, and then years later the multi-sig gets hacked. You switch over to a proprietary license to protect against like some competitor that you get scared of in the short term, and then 2 years later it turns out that competitor ended up completely disappearing. But now your project effectively, instead of being part of the public commons, is something that's really much more tightly bound to one particular group's interests, and no one else is really empowered and to take it and move it forward themselves. And so these things happen in kind of stages, and it's important to notice it. And I think it's really importance to grow and nurture this core of the ecosystem that really believes in censorship resistance, open source, privacy, security, all of the core values of the ecosystem, and not just by talking about them as abstract things, but as really making sure that those are the concrete bedrock that everything else is built on top of. And so our ability to have an ecosystem that is open, and to have an ecosystem where people are free to build on top of each other, an ecosystem where people are actually able to verify the software that they're running and that they are depending on, continues to be a reality where it is, and becomes a reality once again in those areas where it stopped.
We're seeing a lot of vertical integration in the space. Protocols launching their own chains, also launching their own front ends. Some institutions launching their own chains, experimenting with protocols. You've been advocating for full stack openness. But these teams are trying to grow. They need to monetize and expand their ecosystems. How do you think it will play out in terms of which layers of the stack, if anything, everything needs to be open or not, and where does monetization come from?
So I think often the biggest players in an ecosystem definitely have this incentive to become these closed wall gardens and try to kind of keep the growth internalized to themselves and be able to use that to extract more and more over time. But I think realistically, if you're not in the top 2 or 3 in any particular space, then openness is actually the most pragmatic strategy. And even from a profit maximizing perspective. And the reason why is because openness is the thing that enables you to gain the economies of scale that you need to compete with the big guys if you are not a big guy yourself. There is no other solution. If you go at it alone, then you have a team which is less powerful, which has a smaller number of developers, which is less able to get the top quality talent for every individual layer of what you're doing. And the people who are bigger are going to do it better. But if you and the other smaller players can cooperate, work together on shared libraries, also work together on open standards so that you can interoperate with each other and to build as part of one shared ecosystem, that is the way in which you actually do gain access to that same level of scale and those economies of scale, and you're able to be successful. And so I think one of the most important tasks for us is to help more of the smaller companies and participants in every space really realize that and work together through openness to be able to build a playing field where it can all be successful.
You mentioned open standards. You mentioned shared libraries. We've been doing that at OpenZeppelin for the past 9 years, starting with Solidity, then expanding to different languages and ecosystems. What do you think are the critical standards that need to be worked on by companies like OpenZeppelin and the rest of the community that are important to onboard more developers and more adoption?
Yeah. So one is wallet interoperability. A lot of the time, the way that you generate answers to these kinds of questions is you basically ask, what are things that people took for granted in 2016? And then you make sure that they still apply, even in the context of this much more complicated world where you have L2s and privacy protocols and like these much more complicated stacks, right? And so with wallet interoperability, the most basic guarantee you have is like, if you have your account inside of one wallet, you should be able to take it out and move it into another wallet. And this is something that account abstraction done wrong can really be a step backwards on, right? And so if we want to do account abstraction, it's important to really do that in a way that you continue to have portability. Also, privacy protocols. Privacy protocols depend on users holding secrets for privacy and not just for authentication. That also is something that needs to be portable. Then moving any kind of state that you have across layer 2s. Also, if you look at a lot of non-financial privacy use cases, they involve storing credentials locally and then ZK proving them. And if you want that to work, then that needs to be a standardized data store and it needs to be portable. So I think that there is a big gold mine of opportunities to standardize better in that whole space. And basically wallets are essentially software wallets are expanding into kind of almost being entire secure cores of an operating system. And hardware wallets, if you push hardware wallets to their logical conclusion, you've basically reinvented smartphones. And I actually think that's a good thing, because if you take security as a non-negotiable, that means that the end stage of your journey is creating an actually secure smartphone, which is something the world really needs. So that's one important place. Another important place to look is interoperability standards, right? And so this week there have been, a lot of announcements around OIF, also a lot of announcements around EIL, and moving from one L2 to another L2, something that is not a single company dominated private product, but that is basic public infrastructure, and where the people who are providing liquidity that is not an enshrined monopoly. It's an open market. So I think those things are important as well. And then if you go beyond that, it's just look at the whole stack, right? In any situation where there's multiple alternatives, you need to make sure that those alternatives speak the same language.
So account abstraction, privacy, interoperability, those are actually key areas that we're kind of pushing standards on. We work with the Ethereum Foundation closely on account abstraction, on OIF, or intents. You talk about shared public infrastructure. I wanted to dig deeper on that in terms of what have you seen and what have we learned as an ecosystem in terms of funding for this open infrastructure, and in particular, if everything is open source, where's the competitive advantage, and how do the builders of this infrastructure can monetize and build sustainable businesses?
So I think one piece is that often it's easy to underestimate the extent to which the technology is not the moat, right? There are plenty of examples of software in this ecosystem where they are fully open source. They even charge a fee, and at the same time they continue to exist, and they continue to have users, and they can continue to successfully collect fees. And the theoretical ability to fork it and do your own thing is something that's just making a fork by itself doesn't cut it, right? And the only thing that's the type of fork that succeeds is the type that actually adds is additive to the ecosystem, that introduces a genuinely innovative level of new functionality on top, right? So I think that's that's one piece. I think also another piece is that any one of these solutions, it has many different parts of the stack that are at multiple layers, and there's been this multi-decade long history, right, of even proprietary players that have some proprietary offering at the same time open sourcing all kinds of other layers of the stack, because ultimately they also benefit from those parts of the ecosystem being interoperable and those parts of the ecosystem being open, right? And this is something that Google has done. This is something that all kinds of companies inside of crypto and outside of crypto have done. Often, also, one thing I've realized is that the missing piece in these situations is often not even money as much as it is coordination. Basically, for something to happen, often there just needs to be that concerted effort, and there needs to be that kind of common knowledge that, yes, this is happening now. These are the people that are working together to build it, and this is a thing that you can now participate in and and become part of. And I think we've seen that with Kohaku, right, where we announced it recently, and of course EF putting in a lot of resources, but it's starting to get more and more external contributors. We would love OpenZeppelin to also become external contributors, as well as other companies in the space, including here, and just when you can create that consensus that the open version of the thing that is happening. There's a lot of people who come out of the woodwork who have wanted it to exist for a long time and have just been waiting for that opportunity. And when the opportunity does exist, to participate.
Good. In terms of open source and public goods funding, Ethereum has been leading the charge with grants for the past 10 years. Are there any specific areas that you think are underdeveloped or underinvested that you would like the developers here and in the community to be paying more attention to?
Yeah, so there have been a lot of these efforts to try to create these sort of more systematic and also like more decentralized ways of determining like what contributions to what projects need to be funded, and it's a super valuable, super important problem, and so we've had our various rounds of Gitcoin grants, quadratic funding, and now we have Devansh working on deep funding, and all of these things are becoming more and more mature, and I view these things as being really valuable just to kind of provide that baseline, right? Because a lot of people, I think, especially people who work on open source, like they are not looking for like salaries that are literally competitive to what they would get if they like went and just worked on things for JP Morgan. But at the same time, they do need to survive. They do need to feed their families. They do, and especially need some guarantee of stability. And so I think these projects are really valuable for just being able to meet that bar for across a wide number of spaces for as many different projects as possible. And so it's really valuable to continue working on that. Also, it's and then the other thing is like these kinds of projects, right? Like they always, they start off, they're theoretically about funding, but also often in times like they end up being about like surfacing coordination as well, right? Like they often end up having this effect of creating a consensus that like, wait, this project is valuable and we haven't really been thinking about it, like now we are, and a lot of people start contributing, right? And so that's that is something that I think is also going to be really important. Another interesting area that I think is valuable to look into more. So I've recently become more and more a fan of copyleft licenses, right? So things in the GPL family, basically, licenses that say this is free for you to use if you make the things that you fork off of it free for people to use and see the code and develop as well. And that's this is also a pragmatic strategy, right? That is something that where if you create copyleft code, then not only are you making that code available, but you're also contributing to this incentive for other people to make their code open as well, right? And so effectively, it's it's creating the moat of open code, right? And it's this moat that's made up of code written by all kinds of contributors everywhere around the world that you can join and be part of to the point. And I think if it grows enough, then it can actually start out competing the kind of moat that you can get by being proprietary, right? And so I think copyleft, and then also business models that do combine copyleft with some kind of commercial approach is something that also has been done historically. Like I think this is also something that's been really valuable, and so Ethereum Foundation has been pushing more and more of its own code and code that it gives grants to under various types of copyleft terms as well.
What you said about the copyleft licenses makes a lot of sense. We've been creating open source software, in particular the libraries, for the past 9 years. We've been experimenting a lot with different types of licenses. Can you talk a little bit about the distinction between public goods and open source?
So public goods are like a broader term, right? Like if I go and let's say I buy like some house in Buenos Aires, and then I take that house down and I turn it into a public park, and I put up a sign saying anyone can come here, I have created a public good, right? But then public goods are also something that, like, I think the flip side of the fact that the category is so broad is that it's a category that it's like very easy to pretend you're doing it even if you're not, right? Like, there have been hundreds of projects where really what they're doing is they're building a commercial product. And just because they don't technically charge for the public good, like maybe it's supported by advertising, or maybe they're just trying to like build up a moat over, and so they're not charging at the beginning, they still say like, oh, we are providing this public good. Sometimes I've even seen projects where like they do charge for it and they still call it a public good, right? And so it's like, if the thing is good and if there's anything public about it, then it's a public good. It's sort of like OpenAI, right? It's and so the term like just becomes corruptible, right? And like the thing that I like about the term open source is that it has teeth, right? Open source, like, to be open source, you have to be under an FSF and OSI compatible license. There's a list of these licenses. There's a list of criteria that your license has to meet if you make a new one, and these things are broadly agreed upon in the community. I think the community has done a good job of like really defending the difference between open source and source available, which is where you let people see the source code, but they don't have the legal right to build things on top or even make copies of it. So like like this is one of those things that we've learned as an ecosystem, right? Like, once we have the term public goods, everyone says they're a public good. Once we have the term L2, everyone says they're an L2. Once we have the term decentralized, everyone says they're decentralized. And so, like, if you're going to create terms for the ecosystem rallies around, and where a project gets a big social benefit by attaching that term with themselves, the term needs to have teeth. And there need to be actual things that you satisfy, actual work that you have to do to be able to earn that distinction. And I think that's also one of those things where like open source as a term does a really good job.
So let's go to 2035, 10 years away from here. What do you think an open financial system, an open internet based on open standards, that's permissionless, that's private, that's well governed, and that's aligned with the core values of Ethereum, what does it look like?
I think we'll take this question to talk about openness of something that you haven't mentioned and that historically most people forget to mention at all, which is actually important for any of this to like real ultimately matter at all, which is openness and verifiability of hardware, right? So because with software, some of it's proprietary, some of it's open. You can make something that is where like every line of code is published. But if you think about hardware, if you think about like what goes into like even this phone, right? So it's a Google Pixel, but then in reality, it's first of all, it is proprietary, right? And even though I have Graphene OS running, but even still, it's we like most people running Android have a proprietary version of Android effectively, but even still, right? The chips that and like everything that goes into making this phone, it's not even just that you have to trust Google, right? Like if you just had to trust Google, that would like be 90% of the way to utopia. The problem is that you have these like 14 different dependencies. You have Google, you have the people that Google's buying the chips from, you have the programming languages that need to be used to create the chips, and then the programming languages that need to be used to go through three different stages, even more different stages of compiling the description of the chip. You have the foundries themselves. You have all this entire zoo of different pieces that all require multi-million-dollar contracts, NDAs. So if you make a thing using the software, you're not even legally allowed to make it open source, and so it's like sort of the evil twin of the GPL. You like it's stuff that you're forced to make proprietary. And at the same time, this hurts verifiability, right? There's lots of instances of people putting backdoors in hardware everywhere, right? And this is a thing that's like harder to make open source, harder to make verifiable, but ultimately by 2035, I think like this as an ecosystem, like we have to go there, right? And like we have to really complete that level of the stack and like really go from not your keys, not your coins to not your silicon, not your keys.
And do you see Ethereum playing a role there?
I think the Ethereum ecosystem both can play a role in two ways. One, in both providing the resources to make this happen, and two, in being this initial user that really needs all of these properties, right? Like, hardware wallets need to be secure. If you have your keys on a computer, that computer really needs to be secure, right? And we're trying to put crypto and blockchains everywhere. People have been trying to do like even blockchain IoT things, but like IoT that's not secure is a surveillance dystopia. It's a nightmare. So I think just Ethereum as in initial user that where we can be the ones that really benefit from having that extra assurance that things are secure, that things are open, not just at the top layers but also at the bottom layers, is something that can be super valuable.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much for the thoughtful comments and insights. Any final message that you want to send to the community here?
No, I think first of all, just a big thank you to anyone who has been building open technology and building on open standards into this ecosystem. It's because of all of your work that Ethereum as an open ecosystem is able to have this network effects that can match and that can compete with proprietary players and fintechs and banks and all kinds of different companies. And this is a success, and it's a success that we have to keep improving and that we have to keep building on. So thank you for your hard work, and let's keep going for another decade and more. Thank you.